The military base buzzed with activity as soldiers prepared for the annual inspection. Lieutenant Sarah Chen stood in formation, her uniform crisp and perfect. She had worked hard to reach this position, harder than most people could imagine. At 28 years old, she was one of the youngest officers in her unit, respected by her peers and admired for her dedication. General Marcus Stone was known throughout the military as a tough leader. He had served for 30 years and believed in discipline above all else. Today, he would inspect every soldier personally, checking their appearance and equipment. His reputation made even the bravest soldiers. Nervous, Sarah felt the familiar tightness in her chest as the general approached her row. She had been through countless inspections before, but something felt different today. The morning sun beat down on the parade ground, and sweat trickled down her back beneath the heavy uniform jacket. "Lieutenant Chen," the general's voice boomed as he stopped in front of her. His eyes were sharp, scanning every detail of her appearance. "Your uniform appears improperly fitted. Remove your jacket for inspection." Sarah's heart stopped. This was unusual. In all her years of service, no one had ever asked her to remove her jacket during formation. She glanced at her commanding officer, Captain Rivera, who looked equally surprised, but nodded slightly. Orders were orders. Her hands trembled as she reached for the buttons of her jacket. The other soldiers stood perfectly still, eyes forward, but she could feel their curiosity. Time seemed to slow down as she unbuttoned each clasp. The jacket had been her shield, her protection, hiding the truth she had carried for so many years. As the jacket slipped from her shoulders, gasps rippled through the formation. The general's expression changed instantly. His stern face went pale, and his eyes widened in shock. What he saw beneath that jacket was something he had never expected. Sarah stood there in her standard-issue uniform shirt, but it was what covered her arms that made everyone freeze. Long, jagged scars ran up and down both arms, some old and faded, others newer. They told a story of survival, of battles fought not on any battlefield, but in the quiet darkness of her past, the general's hand, which had been ready to point out some minor uniform violation, slowly rose to his forehead. In a gesture that shocked everyone present, this decorated war hero, this man who had faced enemy fire without flinching, rendered a salute. Not the standard military salute, but one filled with deep respect and something else, fear. Fear of what those scars represented, fear of the strength it took to survive whatever had caused them. The silence on the parade ground was deafening. General Stone's hand remained frozen in salute, his eyes locked on Sarah's scarred arms. The morning sun illuminated every mark, every reminder of her past. The other soldiers broke protocol, turning, their heads slightly to understand what had caused their commanding general to react this way. Sarah stood perfectly still, her chin raised, refusing to show shame. She had spent years hiding these scars, wearing long sleeves even in the hottest weather, making excuses to avoid swimming pools and beaches. Now, exposed in front of hundreds of people, she felt strangely free. Captain Rivera was the first to move. She stepped forward, her own hand rising in salute to Sarah. Then, one by one, every soldier on that parade ground followed. It was unprecedented, against all protocol, but no one cared. 300 soldiers stood saluting a lieutenant, not because of her rank, but because of her courage. The general finally lowered his hand, but his expression remained shaken. He had seen combat wounds before, had visited hospitals filled with injured soldiers. But these scars were different. They spoke of a different kind of war, one fought in shadows, one that left wounds on the soul as deep as those on the skin. "Lieutenant Chen." His voice cracked slightly. "Please put your jacket back on." Sarah bent down to retrieve her jacket, her movements slow and deliberate. As she slipped it back over her shoulders, she noticed the general's hands were shaking. This man, who had commanded troops in the most dangerous places in the world, was trembling. "Sir, permission to speak freely?" Sarah's voice was steady, stronger than she expected. The general nodded, unable to find his words. "These scars are from my childhood, sir. From the age of 6 until I was 15, I lived in a home where love meant pain. My father believed in discipline through violence. Every mistake, every wrong word, every moment of weakness earned these marks. The parade ground remained silent. Even the wind seemed to hold its breath. I joined the military to escape that life, to prove that I was more than what happened to me. These scars remind me every day that I survived. They remind me that if I could survive that, I can survive anything. General Stone's eyes filled with tears. In his 30 years of service, he had never felt smaller. He had judged books by their covers, had focused on appearances and protocol, but had never truly seen the soldiers under his command. "I have a daughter," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "She's 14. Last month, I found scars on her arms. Small ones. She said it was nothing, an accident." He paused, his voice breaking. I believed her because it was easier than facing the truth. The general's confession hung in the air like smoke. Sarah saw the pain in his eyes, the guilt that was eating him alive. She understood that look. She had seen it in the mirror for years, the self-blame, the questions that had no good answers. "Sir, with respect, those scars on your daughter, they might not be like mine," Sarah said gently, "but they're a cry for help nonetheless. The fact that you're thinking about them now, that you're willing to see them, that's what matters." The general wiped his eyes quickly, remembering where he was. But he had already shown his humanity, and there was no taking it back. He dismissed the formation with a wave of his hand, asking only Sarah and Captain Rivera to remain. As the other soldiers dispersed, Sarah could hear their whispers. But they weren't whispers of judgment or mockery. They were whispers of respect, of understanding, of shared pain. She realized that many of them probably carried their own hidden scars in the general's office. The three of them sat in uncomfortable silence. The room was decorated with medals and photographs, evidence of a distinguished career, but none of those accomplishments seemed to matter now. "I don't know what to do," General Stone admitted, his voice hollow. "My wife thinks I'm overreacting. She says teenage girls are dramatic, that it's just for attention. But seeing your scars today, Lieutenant, I realize something. What if it is for attention? What if my daughter needs attention, and I've been too busy being a general to be her father?" Sarah leaned forward in her chair. "General, I'm not a therapist. I'm just a soldier who survived. But I can tell you this, those scars saved my life." The general looked confused. "How could scars save your life?" "Because when I was 15, a teacher saw them. I had been so careful for years, always wearing long sleeves, always hiding. But one day during gym class, my sleeve rode up. Mrs. Patterson saw them. And instead of looking away, instead of pretending she hadn't seen, she asked me about them." Sarah's voice grew softer. "I lied at first. Said I fell. Said it was an accident. But she didn't believe me. She kept asking, kept showing up, kept caring. Eventually, I told her the truth. She called child services. They removed me from my home. I spent the next 3 years in foster care, but I was safe. Captain Rivera, who had been silent until now, spoke up. My brother had scars too, on his wrists. We all noticed but said nothing. We thought if we ignored it, it would go away. He died when he was 17. The weight of her words settled over them like a heavy blanket. 3 military officers, trained to face any enemy. Sitting in an office confronting the hardest battle of all the ones fought in silence. In homes, in hearts, General Stone stood up and walked to his window. Looking out at the base he commanded, "I've been so focused on discipline, on strength, on making soldiers tough, but maybe I forgot about making them whole." The afternoon sun cast long shadows across the general's office. Sarah watched as this powerful man struggled with emotions he had probably buried for decades. Military training taught soldiers to push through pain, to never show weakness. But sometimes, acknowledging pain was the bravest thing a person could do. "What was her name?" the general asked suddenly, turning from the window. "You're a teacher, the one who helped you. This is Patricia Patterson. She taught English and coached volleyball. She wasn't particularly warm or friendly. Actually, most kids thought she was strict and cold. But she noticed things. She paid attention." Sarah smiled at the memory. She told me later that she had been in an abusive relationship when she was young. She recognized the signs because she had lived them. The general returned to his desk and pulled out his phone. He stared at it for a long moment, his finger hovering over the screen. I should call my wife. Tell her I'm coming home early today. Really talk to our daughter. Sir, you should, Captain Rivera agreed. But be prepared. She might not open up right away. Trust takes time to build, especially when it's been broken. Sarah nodded. In general, those scars on your daughter, they might not mean what you think they mean. Some kids hurt themselves as a way to cope with overwhelming feelings. It's not about wanting to die. It's about wanting the pain inside to match the pain outside. It's about control when everything feels out of control. The general's hands clenched into fists. Did your father ever face consequences? Did he go to jail? He did. 2 years. Not enough in my opinion, but it was something. But honestly, sir, the punishment didn't matter to me as much as being believed. Being saved, having someone say, "This is not okay, and you deserve better." A knock on the door interrupted them. A young sergeant entered with a message. Sir, there's a situation developing. Private Johnson has locked himself in his barracks room. He's saying things that have his roommate worried. He's asking to speak with Lieutenant Chen specifically. Sarah's heart sank. She knew Private Jonsuna, quiet 20-year-old from Texas, who had joined the Army 6 months ago. He was a good soldier, always on time, always following orders. But she had noticed he kept to himself, rarely joining the other soldiers during downtime. I'll go, Sarah said, standing immediately. The general stood too. Lieutenant, you're under no obligation. This isn't part of your duties. With respect, sir, I think it became part of my duties the moment I stopped hiding my scars. People need to know they're not alone. That's more important than any military protocol. He walked quickly across the base. The general, the captain, Sarah. Word had spread fast about what happened at the morning inspection. Soldiers watched them pass, some offering quiet words of encouragement to Sarah. The military community was tight-knit, and news traveled faster than official communications. When they reached the barracks, a small crowd had gathered outside. Private Johnson's roommate, a stocky kid from Ohio, looked terrified. He's got a knife, ma'am. He's not threatening anyone, but he's got it. He keeps saying he's tired of pretending everything is fine. Sarah's blood ran cold. She knew that feeling. She remembered nights when she was 15, 16, 17, holding similar thoughts. Wondering if anyone would even notice if she disappeared. Sarah approached the door slowly, her heart pounding. Behind her, the general ordered everyone to step back and give them space. She could hear muffled sounds from inside the room, someone crying, trying to muffle the sounds. Private Johnson, it's Lieutenant Chen. Can I come in? Her voice was calm, steady, despite the fear racing through her veins. Silence. Then a broken voice. Did everyone hear about your scars, ma'am? Yes, they did. Are you embarrassed? Sarah leaned her forehead against the door. I was terrified this morning. I've spent 12 years hiding them, but now I'm wondering why I wasted so much energy on shame when I should have been proud of surviving. Another long silence. Then the sound of a lock clicking open. The door cracked slightly, and Sarah could see Private Johnson sitting on the floor, his back against the bed. He was holding a pocket knife, but it was closed, resting in his palm. Can I come in alone? Sarah asked over her shoulder. The general hesitated but nodded. She slipped inside and closed the door behind her. The room was neat, military perfect, but cold. There were no personal items, no photos, nothing that indicated a human being actually lived here. It reminded her of her own room when she first joined the military, a space to exist in, not a place to live. Sarah sat down on the floor across from him, maintaining a respectful distance. Private Johnson was young, with red-rimmed eyes and hands that shook slightly. He looked like a kid trying desperately to be a man. I heard what you said at inspection, he whispered. About surviving your childhood? About choosing to see your scars as proof of strength? It took me a long time to see them that way, Sarah admitted. For years, they were just reminders of everything I wanted to forget. I don't have visible scars like yours, Johnson said. Mine are different. Inside, I guess. But they're there. I feel them every day. Sarah nodded. Tell me about them if you want. No judgment, no reporting to superiors, just two people talking. The young soldier's story poured out like water from a broken dam. He talked about growing up with parents who fought constantly, about being bullied at school for being too sensitive, about joining the military hoping it would make him tough. But instead, he felt more alone than ever. The structure that helped others made him feel trapped. The brotherhood that gave others purpose made him feel like a fraud. "Everyone here is so strong," he said, tears streaming down his face. "They come from hard places too, but they handle it. They joke and laugh and move on. I can't. I wake up every day feeling like I'm drowning and I have to pretend I'm fine. I'm so tired of pretending." Sarah's heart ached for him. "Private Johnson, strength isn't about pretending you're fine. Real strength is admitting when you're not. Do you know how many soldiers on this base are probably feeling exactly what you're feeling? But everyone is so busy pretending that no one talks about it now." She slowly rolled up her sleeve, showing her scars in the dim light of the room. "These happened because I had no one to talk to. No one who would listen. No one who would believe me. I don't want that for you or anyone else." Johnson stared at the scars, then at his own empty hands. "I don't want to die, ma'am. I just want to stop hurting." "I know. And there are people who can help with that. Professional people who understand this pain better than I do. Will you let us help you?" Private Johnson nodded slowly, setting the clothes knife on the floor and pushing it toward Sarah. She picked it up carefully and placed it in her pocket. The young soldier's shoulders shook as he cried, years of held-back emotion finally finding release. Sarah moved closer and sat beside him, not touching, just present. After several minutes, she opened the door. The General and Captain Rivera stood outside with the base counselor, Dr. Williams, a kind woman in her 50s who specialized in military mental health. They entered quietly, and Dr. Williams immediately knelt beside Johnson, speaking in low, reassuring tones. The General pulled Sarah aside. "You saved that young man's life today, Lieutenant." Sarah shook her head. "No, sir. He saved his own life by asking for help. I just showed up." That evening, General Stone left the base hours earlier than usual. He drove home, rehearsing what he would say to his daughter, his hands gripping the steering wheel tightly. When he arrived, he found her in her room, earbuds in, staring at her phone. She looked surprised to see him home before dinner. "Dad, is everything okay?" He sat on the edge of her bed, something he hadn't done in years. "Emma, I need to talk to you about your arms. The scars I saw last month." His daughter's face went pale, and she pulled her sleeves down instinctively. "Dad, I told you. It was nothing." "I know what you told me. But I'm asking you now, really asking, to tell me the truth. And whatever you say, I promise I'll listen. No judgment, no anger. Just your father wanting to understand." Tears filled Emma's eyes. The story came out slowly at first, then faster. She talked about the pressure at school, about feeling like she wasn't good enough, about anxiety that felt like it was crushing her chest. The cutting had started small, a way to feel something other than numbness, a way to have control when everything else felt chaotic. General Stone listened, really listened, for the first time in a long time. He didn't interrupt with solutions or lectures. He just held his daughter as she cried and promised they would figure this out together. 3 months later, Sarah stood on the same parade ground where everything had changed. But this time, she was giving a speech to new recruits. The general had asked her to speak about resilience, about mental health, about the importance of asking for help. "Being a soldier means being strong," she told them, her voice carrying across the field. "But strength isn't about hiding pain. It's about acknowledging it and moving forward anyway. Every person here has battles they're fighting that no one else can see. The mark of a true soldier is knowing when to ask for backup." In the audience, Private Johnson stood at attention, 3 months of counseling having given him tools to manage his pain. He still struggled, but he was learning. He was surviving. Beside him stood others who had quietly approached Sarah after that day, sharing their own hidden struggles. General Stone watched from the reviewing stand, his daughter Emma beside him. She had insisted on coming, curious about the lieutenant her father talked about with such respect. Emma was in therapy now, learning healthier ways to cope. The The scars on her arms were fading, and more importantly, the pain behind them was being addressed. As Sarah finished her speech, she rolled up her sleeves deliberately, showing her scars to the hundreds of new recruits. These marks are part of my story, but they don't define me. They remind me that I'm stronger than anything that tried to break me. Whatever you're carrying, whatever battles you're fighting in silence, you don't have to fight alone. That's what being part of something bigger than yourself means. The parade ground erupted in applause. Sarah saw the general salute her again, but this time there was no fear in his eyes. Only respect, gratitude, and hope. Hope that by breaking the silence, they could save others from suffering alone. Hope that scars, whether visible or hidden, could become symbols of survival rather than shame. And hope that in showing their wounds, they could help others find the courage to heal their own.